But the lady was telling me, said, it's got some real deep history, though. I said, yeah. So you want to order it anyway, because that got some deep history. Yeah.
Right, right. No doubt. All right, can everyone still see the screen? Sorry about that.
I'll mute myself out.
Okay. Can everyone still see the screen? Yes, no, maybe so.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. And what you see? I guess that's more so the question. What do you see?
Something about African ancestry at the bottom.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. All right, so let's lower it up here. All right. Now, this is Rick Kettles, PhD. He's the founder of African Ancestry Incorporated, scientific director, African Ancestry Incorporated, country of origin, Senegal, Nigeria. And then you have Dr. Gina Page. She's the co-founder of African Ancestry Industry Pioneer, innovator, entrepreneur, country of origin, Nigeria. All right. So right here, Kettles, he said, this is an interview in which that he did. All right. Hold on. Let me make sure that it is also being recorded in here.
Recording did not start because your storage is full. Please log in and delete recordings or purchase more storage from your account.
Okay, well, I got it recorded, so it should still come through. All right, so it right here says, we don't oversell, we provide a service. If you're interested in exploring a tiny bit of your DNA, understand that what I'm getting ready to go over is just a tiny bit of your DNA, and trace its ancestry, we can do that, the interviewer said. When you say it's a tiny little amount, Kettle said it's less than 0.1%. This is a 2012 60-minute interview. Genealogy and DNA testing exposed. Right, so we're just talking about a little bit. All right, and so I'm going to use myself as an example, and I already went over how to protect yourself when you're doing your DNA. Is make sure that you have your copyright, trademark, trade name on the public record. All right. You can send copies to the various agencies such as African Ancestry, Ancestry.com, MyHeritage.com, FamilyTreeDNA.com, and et cetera, 23andme.com, whatever. You can send your documentation to them once you have it on the public record. But first you have to have your copyright, trademark, trade name, and the cover letter sent through at the Register of Deeds via the county recorder's office. That's how you protect your DNA. All right. Now I've had mines on the record for the last 10 years. If actually more than that, as far as my copyright, trademark, trade name agreement. So here it says, your ancient admixture. Have you wanted to know the deep history of your lineage? So this is going into the deep history of the lineage, and this is from Genome Link. Ancient admixture focuses on DNA from thousands of years in the past. This is thousands of years in the past. All right, so let's look at it. They're talking about the hunter and gatherer, 1%, First Farmer 9%, Pastor Royalists 12%, Indigenous American 1%. It says West African 69%, East Asians 3%, and South Asian 5%. Now, let's look at this, because there's some things in which that you still have to go back and analyze, because of the fact is that they're saying that Indigenous American, they're talking about specifically the Siberian. And not talking about the Aboriginal Indigenous Americans, i.e. the so-called Negroes who was already here. They're referring to specifically the Siberian, all right, which is those who came from out of Asia, came over the Bering Strait and came down into, from Alaska down into what we now refer to as the United States, or the Plain Indians, as they're referred to as. All right, so this is how we know that the test is skewed in this particular effect, but we're going to get to it. So right here, hold on, let me charge up the computer. Okay. All right. So right here, we went to GEDmatch or GDmatch.com. And then it speaks about the Neo-African. It's supposed to be the new African, 49.06. Everybody mute their background, please. All right. 509 area code, mute your background. All right. So right here, new African, Neo-African, 49.06%. Paleo African, 26.50. East African, 9.37. West European, 6.59. Northwest African, 2.61. Mediterranean, 2.28. East European, 1.93. And South Asia, 1.65. All right. Now, that's the what is called Dodecad V34 Ancestors Oracle. Now, they have what is called the Harappa World for Ancestors Oracle. Here, West African 76.35%, Northeast European 6.67%. Now, Mediterranean 4.88%, East African 3.42%, Pygmy 2.94%, Southwest Asian 1.43%, San 1.30%, Caucasian 1.23%, South Indian 1.08%. All right. So I got 1.23% Caucasian. All right. At least that's what it says here. Now you get the Ethiohelix K10. All right. This is plus French Oracle results. We have West African 53.52%, Eastern Bantu 16.31%, French 12.26%, North African 5.2%, Biaka Pygmy 3.97%, Kio San 3.46%, Neo or Nilo Saharian, which is 2.86%, and Omotic 2.42%. Now, that's according to the Ethiohelix. Now, we come here to the right. It goes into quite a bit of information here. Come on down. Well, first we go into the population sharing. So of that population, we have a lot of sharing in which that is going on. All right. You had the Kaaba, 19.79 distance. Baman, 20.5. Igbo, 20.66. Hausa, 20.8. Congo, 24.66. Yoruba, 24.78. Fang, 25.13. Brong, 26.41. Bembrama, 28.44. Mada, 31.56. Mandinka, 31.7. Dogon, 35.72. We got here Bantu South African, 37.94. The Fulan, 39.72. PD, 41.03. Nguni, 43.26. Hausa, 43.93. Hima, 45.27. Bantu Kenya, 45.55. And Seto Sawana, which is South African, 46.3. So they correlated all of these particular populations and went into the various mixtures in which that makes up the DNA. Now we go in even more here to the primary population and source. It says 78.6 Hausa, 78.8 Ibu, 78.2 Hausa, 78.3 Ibu, 78.1 Hausa. As you see, 75.3 Yoruba, 75% Yoruba, 85 point. So they're going into the mixed mode population of sharing, all right, of the various DNA in which that makes up my DNA, as they're saying here. As you see, Hausa, Brong, Ibu, Hausa, Brong, Ibu. And then it gets into the secondary population, which is East Africa now, in which that now they go into the 21.4% of Egypt. All right, the 22%.22 2. Egypt, 21.8% Egyptian, 21.7% Egyptian, 21.9 Libya, 21.7 Libya, 24.2 Egypt, 24.7 Egyptian, 25% Libya, 14.6 French, 14.6 French, 25.4 Egyptian, 24.9 Egyptian, 19.5 Algerian, 19.7 Nigeria, 19.1 Morocco, 19.2 Morocco, 25.8 Libya, and 21.4 ETA. So once again, this is showing that in West Africa, we're talking about Moroccan, Algerian ancestry. East Africa, we're talking about Egyptian, Kenya ancestry, so forth and so on. So we go back to genome link, as it is called, and then it goes into your global ancestry overall, ethnicities. All right, West African, 84%, East African, 3%, Iberian, and of course, Iberia is what? Portugal and Spain. 3%, which is where the Moors ruled for 800 years. Near East, 3%, Northwestern Europe, 2%, Eastern Europe, 2%, Italian, 2%. Here, native people of Amazon and the Caribbean, 1%. Mainland East Asia, 1%. Native people of North America, 1%. Dravidian, 1%. African hunters, gatherers, 1%. North Africans, 1%. Native people of the Andes, 1%. And then the Maritime East Asian, 1%. So we know that normally each cell of the human body has 23 pair of chromosomes, 46 total chromosomes. Half come from your mother, the other half come from your father. 2 of the chromosomes, the X and the Y chromosome, determines your sex as a male or female when you're born, right? So this is what we've been told. So, all right, then they get into chromosome ethnicity, the shared chromosome. So on all 22 pair chromosomes, all right, 22 chromosomes plus the one which is the X and the Y, West African, 84% total. East African, 3% total, and it's shared on within 21 chromosomes. Iberian shared within 21 chromosomes, 3%. Northwestern Europe shared within 20 chromosomes, 2%. Eastern European shared 2% within 20 chromosomes. Italian, 19 chromosomes, 2%. Native people of Amazon and Caribbean shared with 2 chromosomes, 1%. Total. Mainland East Asian shared with 6 chromosomes, 1% total. Native people of North America shared with 2 chromosomes, 1 total. All right, so continue coming down. And now this is coming from the genome link, coming from GEDmatch, coming from ancestry.com. It is also coming from another area, huh? Not yet. But we will have some more information up here soon, coming also from 23andMe, because you have to go and do more than just one. 509, mute your background. All right. So, all right, keep coming down. All right, so here it says your DNA looks more like DNA from these 11 world regions. All right. So of course they can't tie your DNA specifically back to a map location, but they're talking about specifically within the people within those particular areas that they have tied the DNA back to. So Nigeria, 32%, Benin and Togo, 22%, Cameroon, Congo, and Western Bantu people, 20%. Um, the Ivory Coast and Ghana, 9%. Scotland, 5%. Portugal, 4%. Senegal, 3%. Ireland, 2%. Sweden and Denmark, 1%. Malian or Mali, 1%. Now I don't know why they separate Mali from Nigeria is beyond me. It's because Nigeria, and Mali is right there all together. But England and Northwestern Europe, 1%. So when we look at that, we have to go to historical information now, because you would be thinking, oh, well, that's a lot of those that England and Western Northwestern Europe, that's Sweden and Denmark, Ireland, those various percentages, those are Europeans. However, when you go and do the riddle of prehistoric times written in 1911, it says this: the first inhabitants of Southern Europe, Northern Africa, Arabia, France, and British Islands were a race of small men who did not average in height more than 4 feet 5 inches. They were the slight built with dark complexion. Okay. They were cave dwellers emanating from Lemuria. They first buried their dead in caves, and then the caves were not available. They placed their dead in long barrels or graves in a row. Some such barrels were 400 feet long and 20 feet wide. They were an African people, and their appearance evidence. You want this? And there appeared evidence that they were sometimes practicing cannibalism. Now, this is not necessarily true. However, this is what was written in the Riddicles of Prehistoric Times. It is said that the first people in Ireland were the Formitation or Tienge people. They were a dark, stunted race, utterly savage, because any time in which that they believe they go and see any black people, they were savages to these Europeans, using rough, unwrought stone implements. So far as can be learned, they did not know the use of fire, and that is not true. But see, they keep tying themselves back into the scenario. But this is in Europe. Remember, they supposed to own Europe, but they seen Africans in Europe way before them. Now I'm gonna show you how far before them coming on the scene. It is said that they came from Africa on ships. Now hold up. So they knew how to build ships, but didn't know shit about fire. You see the idiocy of this? James Anderson. You see how stupid this is? So they knew how to build ships, but don't know how to use fire. And they use stones. How the fuck you build ships and still use stones? See?
Anybody believe that they need to be harsh with them?
Yeah. But see, this is the nonsense that they teach our people, and the reason why our people is in the predicament that we're in to this very day. All right, because they believe this shit. But here, let's go to Gods and Spacemen in the Ancient West and see what W. Raymond Drake says about these people. He states that the Pygmies inhabited Earth for 30 million years. So who are the Pygmies? Well, hold up, let's look. The Pygmies is a term used for various ethnic groups worldwide whose average height is usually low. Anthropologists define Pygmies as a group whose adult men grows to less than 150 centimeters, 4 feet 11 inches in height. A member of the slightly taller groups is termed pygmioid. The best known pygmies are the Aka, the Ife, the Mbutu or Mbuti of Central Africa. They are also pygmies of Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, and Brazil. They're also so as you see, over the 30 million years, we spread it throughout the whole world because where is Brazil? Brazil is in South America. So we was already in South America thousands and millions of years ago. The term also includes the Negrito of Southeast Asia, the remains of at least 25 miniature humans who lived between 1,000 to 3,000 years ago were found on the island of Palu in Micronesia. So it is commonly held belief that the human life evolved out of Africa. This is what they told us millions of years ago. Well, damn, if they've been here on the planet for 30 millions of years, then more than likely we are their descendants. And this is what this information says, which is in Wikimedia comment. Many indigenous African tribes are direct descendants of some of the earliest modern humans groups and have unique DNA markers. So as you've seen, I have some of the pygmy. Even though I'm almost 6 feet tall, I still have some of the pygmy markers, as you've seen in my DNA, the archaic ancient DNA, all right, or archaic admixture ancient DNA. These tribes also have unique genetic features such as the language, which is not closely related to one another that exists today. Additionally, these tribes have been able to maintain their cultural traditions for thousands of years despite European colonialism or colonization, colonization in nearby regions. Remarkably, all of the tribes on this list are still around and practice their ancient traditions. Number one, African pygmies are widely known around the world for their small stature and are not one tribe, but various small tribes that lives in Central Africa. Like the other old African tribes on the list. Remember, allegedly I had Neo-African, which is New African. Then I also had what? Archaic or Paleo-African, Old African. So this is the Old African in which that we've seen in the list right here. Like the other old African tribes on the list, the Pygmies are thought to be descended from some of the earliest groups of humans. Several current pygmy tribes have DNA markers closely resembling or related to one of the oldest groups of human ancestry or ancestors. So they have some of the oldest DNA markers. Then you have the San tribe. Remember, I also had San. Now understand that we as native, indigenous, aboriginal people have African ancestry because as you've seen, the pygmies scattered throughout the world hundreds and thousands of years ago, even millions of years ago. So you've seen that they was in Brazil. You've seen that they was in the Pacific Islands as far as from Australia, all right, as we've seen here, from all the way from Australia to Papua New Guinea, you know, to the Southeast Asia, you know, to Micronesia, you know. So they've been all over the world, you know what I'm saying? I mean, been around the world, yeah. You know, that is real for the pygmies. They've been all over the planet. All right. So the pygmies are thought to be descended from some of the earliest groups of humans. As you see, 30 million years they have existed at least. So we're talking about even further back humans than this. All right. Further back. They try to say just recently, well, not too long ago, I should say back in the 40s and 50s, that the pygmies were Homo erectus, but they are humans. And as you can see, they are what we would call African. They were just small African people. But we do know that according to certain books coming from the Masonic orders, Charles Ledbetter, he stated specifically that at one time the Pygmies were giants and they shrunk. Now he doesn't go into how they shrunk, but we know that um, millions of years ago, the oxygen content on the planet Earth was much higher than it is now. We know that at least 65 million years ago, which is allegedly half the time in which that the pygmies been on the planet, um, it was 35%. Now it is less than 21%. So we talking about with the oxygen decline, and then these pygmies, in order to survive earthly disasters in which that took place, allegedly went behind waterfalls or went into the planet Earth. So with less oxygen content and less oxygen, I should say, they begin to shrink in size. All right. Now the Sand People has been living in southern Africa for at least 30,000 years. They are believed to be not only the oldest African tribe, but quite possibly the world's most ancient race. The Sand has the most diverse and distinct DNA than any other indigenous African group. This means the Sands are direct descendants of some of the original ancestral human groups. All right. But damn, only 30,000 years? You know, that's not true. But this is what they want to say because they're trying to say that humans only existed for 250 to 300,000 years. And then the Sand People only been in Southern Africa for only 30,000 years. So we see that there's some things in which that is going on here. So I went back to GEDmatch.com, and then this is the population coming from the ethnohelix K10 Africa only. So you see the Kung people, who are also related to the San people, have that DNA, and it is also spread throughout Africa. You have the Biak pygmies, which is showing the Biak pygmies that's there within the only within the Biak pygmies. But the Kong people, which are the part of the San people, they in the Sahara, they in the Mbuti pygmies, is in the East Africa, is in the Kaosan or Kaosan, they're in the West African, they're in the Haza, they are in the Bianca pygmy, you know, and they're in the Omactic. So their DNA spread throughout Africa. And who are the Kong people? They are the Bushmen. They are they related to the Sun people. All right. Then Mbuti pygmy. You see the Mbuti pygmy. Those are the only connections there. Then you have the pygmy. You have the Mbuti pygmy. You have the Sun people. You have the East African. You have the Kao Sun. All right. And then you had the San NB, which correlates to the Kao Sun. Then you have the Sandawi, which, as you see, the Sandawi is connected to all of the African people. All right, at least the ones that are listed here. You're talking about the Sahara Africans, East Africans, Pygmies, East African 1, that was East African 2, the Kao Sun, the West Africans, the Hassa, the Pygmies again, the North African, and the Omotic. So you see, so who are the Sandawi people? As we see here, these connections. Okay, so let's look. All right, the Sandawi people This is really who they're talking about, in which that the San people, which is known as the Kung people or the Bushmen, are really closely connected with. Let's see how they look. So Sandawi people. All right. Okay. So right here, this is the Sandawi people. Let's see if we can get a larger picture here. Okay, here we go. So these are some of the oldest people on the face of the earth. And in fact, these are the people in which that most of the Africans have as far as in their blood. All right. We also have this. Okay. And I'm showing you this because these are the connections. So yes, we've been here in the Americas for hundreds and thousands and millions of years, way before the Albion European, way before the so-called red races, known as the Indians. All right. Because as you've seen, we just showed you that I have pygmy blood. And so that means when we just seen that the pygmies be on the planet for at least 30 million years, and then they was in South Africa, but they was also in South America. Okay. Also in South America. So we seen Brazil. Brazil is one of the largest territories in South America, if not the largest. All right. So right here it says African hunters and gatherers. It says 200,000 years ago, the ancestors of the San Bushmen began to go their own way from other humans. The San, along with the Hadza and the Pygmies of the Congo, remain witness to the ancient hunter-gathering traditions of humanity. As the continent was overwhelmed by farmers and pastoralists, all right, these ancient hunters abided, moving to less hospitable territories and achieving some sort of symbiosis with the outsiders. So as you see here, this is South Africa. So not only were the Pygmy / San people, all of them together, because they all come from the same ancient lineage. As we know, the word Anu was applied to the Pygmies. The Pygmies was known as the Anu people. So when you read Zechariah Sitchin's information, disinformation, misinformation about Anu coming from the stars, this is specifically talking about the Pygmy people. The Pygmy people is known as the Anu people. The Bantu people, who also is from the Pygmies, as we shown earlier, as we all are, especially those who are heavily melanated, or from the San people, even the lighter skinned people, such as within our so-called black race, we say Moorish or Moor race, we find those same DNA markers, right? The division with the African hunter-gatherers was judged on a scale of tens of thousands of years rather than thousands. This reflects the particular or peculiar role of Africa in the human evolution history, as African history is far longer than in other regions. So African history is far longer than in other regions. All right. And that makes about sense because when we read Forbidden Archaeology, The Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson, they speak about in South Africa where there was Pacific spheres in which that was found that dated back to 2.8 billion years ago. And we was already in the Americas at least 600 million years ago. So not just in South America, Brazil, as the pygmies, even though, Raymond Drake, W. Raymond Drake was very conservative with his estimate of how long the pygmies been on the planet, but he has done something in which that nobody else has done except for Forbidden Archaeology and Hidden History of the Human Race by Michael Cremo and Richard L. Thompson, is to date people back, humans back that far, instead of just 200, 300,000 years ago, as they just did here, talking about 200,000 years ago, the ancestors of the sand people began to go their own way from other humans. What other humans? You're talking about the Hausa, and the pygmies of the Congo. Because there was nothing but black people on the planet Earth 200,000 years ago. Europeans just got on planet Earth 6,000 years ago to 8,000 years ago, in between that time period, after the last ice age, which was 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. There were no Mongolians, Asians, until about 4,000 years ago. So we talking about 8,000, 6,000 years, 4,000 years. And even then, the Europeans are made up, as far as a hybrid, 2/3 of Asians and only 1/3 of African. So they are the ones who have the least amount of African in them, but yet they have some African. There's no doubt about it. Otherwise, they wouldn't exist. And it wouldn't be able to have, as it says here, the symbiosis with the outsiders, be able to have sex with them and have children. But they are 2/3 Asian. All right. Remember, there is no Europe. There's only Asia. You have Asia Major and Asia Minor. But there is no Europe. All continents begins with an A, ends with an A. America, Asia, Australia, Antarctica. See, these begins with an A, ends with an A. Those are real continents. Europe is not a continent. No matter what they say, it's technology. And they weren't even the first people in Europe, as they refer to as, would be referred to as Asia, East Asia, or West Asia in this case, excuse me. If we turn the map upside down, it would be that, but that's the way in which that the map actually was. That's the way that we looked at it, was upside down, which is actually right side up. Here, East African. Millions of years ago, East Africa gave rise to the hominin lineage, with many human species coming and going around the edge of the Rift Valley. In Ethiopia, there exist some of the first anatomically modern human remains dated to 200,000 years before the present. It is likely that the non-human African humans derived from a East African population, perhaps a group which also gave rise to the Hadza hunter-gatherers. All right. So right here, it said they gave rise. I'm gonna come down. The modern population of East Africa, or a fusion between disparate elements from there is the deep ancestry of which the Hadza are representative, with the roots in the region hundreds of thousands of years ago. Some of the ancestors of these people migrated out of Africa, but others moved westward, creating the fusion of West Africans. In time, with the Neolithic and agro pastoralists, Euro-Asian people migrated back to East Africa. It gave rise to the Afro-Asiatic and Neolithic peoples. About 3,000 years ago, Bantu agriculturalists moved eastward and mixed with the native hunter-gatherers and Neolithic agro-pastoralists, oralists. It says the moderate population of East Africa or a fusion between these particular elements. All right. So we're talking about East. So it's talking about Kenyan. I got 0.8%, almost 1% Kenyan. So people of Kenya descendant has inherited a highly diverse genetic heritage from a region that is home to almost every major ethnic group found in Greater Africa. The majority of Kenyans belongs to various Bantu subgroups. People with Kenyan ethnic roots are also found on the islands near Kenya, including Masagara, Seychelles, and Comosa, and Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean. Major migration over the last few decades due to the economic and political instability have resulted in large Kenyan population in the UK, in the United States, and Australia. Kenya has produced a disproportionate high number of elite distant runners, most of whom are members of the Kalenjin tribe. All right. Now, the Maasai. Now, the Maasai are Kenyans, but they live in southern, all right? They live in southern Kenya. All right. Now, who are the Maasai? The Maasai are the tallest people. So now he's talking about the Pygmies being 4 feet high, and then the Maasai being almost 7 feet tall. And so you blend those two heights together, you come to about the average of 5 and 5 to almost 6 feet. All right. So this is 5.2% of DNA here. All right. So right here, the Maasai are an ethnic people living in southern Kenya and northern Tanzania. All right. According to their own traditional law, the Maasai are descendants of migrants who came from lower Nile Valley some 500 years ago. So they were the ancient Egyptians. The Maasai are the quote unquote, the, guess you can say, the Messiah or the Meshi, the messengers, the messiahs tribe. All right, they follow the traditions of the Heru, the Maasai. All right, which becomes the word Messiah within the English terminology. All right. We have another group here in America, in which that is known as the Yamasee, the Yamasee. They also come from the same connection. Queen, can you please take that? The Maasai are pastoralists who raise cows in the harsh desert environment of their traditional lands and shun the consumption of hunted meat. All of the Maasai food needs are provided by their cattle. They drink their milk, they eat their meat, and occasionally also drink their blood. This tradition diet has left their mark, with recent DNA studies pointing to a genetically linked high tolerance for lactose among the Maasai. In the past, now you know most Negroes are lactose intolerant, right? However, for those that have the Maasai DNA markers, you might be able to handle milk a little bit more better, you know, especially if you are A blood type or B blood type, but not if you are A blood type, and it's definitely not if you're O blood type. This tradition diet have left this mark, which recent DNA studies pointed to a genetically linked high tolerance for lactose among the Maasai. In the past, cattle rushed from other tribes were common. All right. Let me come down. All right. Who held the belief that God gave all cattle to earth to the Maasai, and who also thus allowed to simply take back their property. The group is known for its intricate and colorful jewelry and for the impressive um, Adumu jumping dance of the Maasai warriors. Now, this is where you get the vertical from. All right. So-called black people have more Maasai connections. Probably like Michael Jordan, he probably has a high amount of Maasai because of his jumping capability. And you know those who are real good at basketball, dunking, so forth and so on. All right, we talking about DNA here. All right, not just because of the particular sport. So here's Central African 0.9%. Right. So now they want to get now to the slave trade. All right. Now everything we done read, nothing was said about the slave trade, but now here comes the slave trade, right? The largest segment of the Central African population belonged to the Bantu subgroup. The African slave trade began 16 into the 19th century, shipping Central African population belonged to Bantu subgroups. The right, and to then make up the large percentage of population in the Caribbean, Brazil, and United States. There is archaeological evidence of human habitation in the Central Africa dating back to at least 100,000 years. Now, if it's all the way back to 100,000 years that we have these African people, you know, then why do they just love to talk about some damn slavery that happened? All right. Right here, Central African pygmies have an ancient indigenous lineage, presenting an extremely genetic divergent from all other human populations. All right. So once again, we're talking about the African pygmies. Once again, these are now the Central African pygmies. All right. So we know that they was back further than 100,000 years ago, and the people in which that they took from this region, or did they? Because remember, we have Abu Bakari II, who came with 2,000 ships. All right. Approximately 25,000 people came, 22 to 25,000 people came with him on these 2,000 ships. 200 in which that came allegedly in the year of 1311. And by 1313, 2,000 more ships. Okay. So we're talking about almost 2,200 ships with 100 people on each one, coming up to around 22,000 people to 25,000 people that came almost 200 years before Christopher Columbus. So there was no slave trade, at least not in the way in which that they were saying. So the people in which that actually came, in which that they're referring to, talking about this damn slave trade thing, people was already here. And these people would be aboriginal to the Albion when he came here. This is why you see our people all up in down the East Coast by the time he got here. And he's seen ships going back and forth as he was coming over here, allegedly.
Sense, I mean,
Huh?
There couldn't have been no slave trade.
Right,
On Abu Bakari and Mansa Musa, it couldn't have been.
right,
That would have been impossible.
right. And plus, remember, at that same time period, according to the writings of Ancient and Modern Britain by David McRitchie, he states that the Europeans had to pay us tribute during the same time period.
Hey, Doc Alim,
Yes,
remember when you mentioned Moors and Masonry by Abdullah?
yes,
That whole book he took about 6 months and he spent at the Library of Congress.
right,
Every treaty in there, I swear to God, it talks about Europeans having to pay
right,
one of us,
right,
melanated people,
right,
tributes.
right.
Okay.
They
When
had
they
to.
say slavery, they're talking about their own. They didn't
Right,
have any power back then, and all the treaties show that.
exactly. They had no power. Right. We had all the
She's right
power.
on
They
that.
had no power.
All that's documented.
Right.
All that's documented.
Hmm.
Documented proof, sister. You're right about that.
So I wanted to make sure that this is understood, that when you were reading DNA information, how they try to tie shit back to slavery, but yet historically, we know that if 22,000 to 25,000 people to come here 200 years prior to Christopher Columbus, and they landed within the various territories now known as the Eastern Seaboard, when he got here, this is why he's seen all these so-called black people, Moors, as they refer to us as Indios. Indios, during that word during the in Latin meant black people or dark complected people during that time period. So this is why he said he's seen all these Indios. This was called West Indios, which became the word Indias or Indians. All right, or Indies. All right. So now we see South Africa 5% and Bahamas 1.8%. All right. So we're talking about that according to um, the Central African ethnicity, South Africa, you will find the same genetic traits. And then even in the Bahamas, you find 1.8% of that same Central African trait. All right. Or DNA markers. Ethnicity estimate, this is 66% Nigerian, 17.1% Iberian, which is Moorish, all right, which is talking about from out of what we refer to now as Morocco and, excuse me, from before we went into Morocco, from out of Spain and Portugal, all right. 16.9% of 4 other ethnicities, 2 genetic groups, all right. So 17.1% Iberian. We're going to get to that in a second, and we will see those connections. So we talked about the Nigerian, 65.6%, West African, 6.6%, Maasai, 5.2%, Sierra Leone, 3.5%, Central African, 0.9%, Kenyan, 0.8%. All right, so all of that is so-called African, so it came up to around 87%. All right, from those various areas. Now, the Nigerian in which that they're talking about, all right, we think it's just talking about, Nigerian, but Nigeria is basically belongs to people over 250 sub-ethnic groups, right? The largest in which is the Isan and the Yoruba. Nigeria was ruled by various kingdoms and tribal rulers and became a colony of Europe in the 19th century. Many people of the African descent in the Americas, and particularly in the Caribbean, has some Nigerian ethnicity. Moderate migrations have resulted in a large presence of the people of Nigerian descent elsewhere in Africa, the United States, Canada, the UK, and the Netherlands. Yoruba art and the intricate wood and metal sculptures in particular emphasizes the human head, which the Yoruba regarded as the essential life source. All right. So Shang was also called Nagi, which literally means black. Na and man, Ki. All right. King Tang and the Shang dynasty was responsible for the unifying China to form their first civilization. This is 1600 to 1046 BC. So remember, the word Shang comes from the word Shango, as we told y'all before. This is the head of Oba, Idu Bra's sculpture from the court of Benin, Nigeria's 16th century. All right. So it's time for the Negroes, Pan-Africans, Malaysian Negroes, Indo-Negroids, the Black worldwide know that the so-called Negro is of the Godhead and should start knowing it, having self-confidence, knowledge of self, and in their ability. All right. I spoke of that some years ago. So here, another large group of Nigerians are the Igbo. Right, Igbo is one of the Nigeria's largest ethnic groups with population estimating ranging from 20 to 50 million. I'm convinced that the Igbo ancestors are Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, because we have the Lima people, Warima, or Mwini, or a Bantu-speaking ethnic group which is native to Zimbabwe and South Africa, with smaller, little-known branches in Mozambique, and Malawi. According to Trudeau Parfit, then professor of modern Jewish studies at the University of London in the 1980s, where he did his first field work among the Lima in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. They numbered in the estimate of 80,000. The name Lima, as Parfit speculates, may originate in Chalima, a Swahili word for the turbans which are worn by some Bantu people, or have originated from the Limbi, a Bantu word for a non-African or a respected foreigner. Since the late 20th century, there has also been increased media and scholarly attention with regards to the Lima claims of common ancestry from the Jewish people. Genetics, Y-DNA analyzed that 2000s has established a partially Middle Eastern origin for a portion of the male Lima population. According to the Lima traditions, their male ancestors were Jews who left Judea about 2,500 years ago and settled in a place called Sinna, which was located on the Arabian Peninsula, present-day Yemen. Years later, according to Rudu Mathova, their oral tradition relates that they migrated into Northeast Africa, Ethiopia. So these people are part of the same Ethiopian Jews, all right? And who are these Ethiopian Jews? What are they called? Anybody know? All right, we keep reading on. After these ancestors integrated with local women and became established in Africa, at some point, the tribe split into two groups. One staying in Ethiopia, as we know, right? These are known as the so-called Black Jews of Ethiopia. All right? The Black Jews of Ethiopia. And then the other traveled further south along the East Coast. The Lima claimed that this second group settled where? In Tanzania and Kenya. All right? Building what is referred to as another Sinna, Sinna 2. Others supposedly settled in Malawi, where their descendants reside today. Some settled in Mozambique, eventually migrating to Zimbabwe and South Africa. Right? Genetic tests carried out by British scientists have revealed that many of the Lima tribal men in Southern Africa have Hebrew origins. According to the report by the BBC, the Lima, a tribe of 80,000 members who live in central Zimbabwe and northern South Africa, has customs which are similar to the Jewish ones. Lima refrain from eating pork and other foods forbidden by the Torah, or forbidden combinations with permitted foods, where yarmulkes, like skull caps, conduct ritual animal slaughter, have a holy day once a week, and even put on a Star of David on their gravestone. According to their oral traditions, the Limba are descended from 7 Jewish men who left um, Israel 2,500 years ago and married African women, according to the BBC. Their particular prayer language is a mixture of Hebrew and Arabic. All right. A Y-DNA genetic study in 1996 of 49 Limba males suggested that more than 50% of the Limba Y chromosomes are Semitic in origin. The genetic studies also found that 50% of the males in the Buba clan from the Kohen markers, a proportion which is higher than that which is found in the general Jewish population. So the Kohen are the rabbis. These are the holy men, the high priests. All right. Now I'm saying all this because my DNA goes back to the Limba people of the Nigeria. All right. Of the Kohen, the priests, high priests. So that was deep because Prince Bey also made us high priests after the order of Melchizedek. All right. Members of the priestly clan of the Limba and the Buba were also one of the 12 clans, have a genetic element also found amongst the Jewish priestly line known as the Kohanim. This is amazing. Professor Tudor Prophet of the University of London told the BBC, it looks as if the Jewish priesthood continued in the West by people called Kohen. And in the same way, it was connected by the priestly clan of the Limba. Now, when I went back and did genetic research on the names of Kohen, I have Kohen actually in my blood lineage, the name Kohen. So this is real deep how all this information comes back and correlates. All right. So it says, in order to more specifically define the Limba people origin, Parfait and others develop a larger study of order to compare additional Limba subjects from whose clans were recorded with males from South Arabia and Africa, as well as the Ashkenaz and the Sephardic Jews. Several rabbis and Jewish association support their recognition as descendants of the lost tribe of Israel. All right, of the lost tribes of Israel. So when the Hebrew Israelites and those say that we are of the lost tribes of Israel, they're right in exact. They're right in exact. It's right here. Here it is. The MDLP World 22 Oracle results. And here it is, Limba, population, Bantu, Mandinka. All right. On and on and on. There it is, Yoruba, sub-Saharan ancestral, Yoruba, Bianca Pygmy, Ethiopian, Jew, Ethiopian. See, that's in the DNA too. Jew, Ethiopian again. Lumbee. Now, where's the Lumbees at? The Lumbees are here in North Carolina. I'm also Lumbee, Moroccan, as we already know, because we Moors. Mozambique, Yemen, Australia, Egyptian, Puerto Rican, Jordan, Stet 7, Michwak, Mexican. And as you see here, the primary population of the mixed mode is nothing but Limba, over and over again, coming straight from the Kohen / Nigerian Limba tribe of Israel, over and over again, as you see. Matter of fact, the whole 1 through 20 is nothing but Limba. And then 17% is Lumbee, right? So the Lumbee Indians, as they were referred to, right? Remember that, the Lumbee Indians, because remember, they are recognized in the state of North Carolina as Indians. All right, the Lumbees, 17%. All right, so remember that. West African, 22. We get into that information. We already went over that. North African, As you see, the North African coming from out of Ethiopia, Egypt, Libya, on across into Algiers, Mauritania, into Morocco, can be found in Morocco. All right, this is where we found the oldest human features, as they refer to them as the most modern human features, was in Morocco. No, I don't think that's a coincidence. But yet we're not Moroccan, but yet the oldest human features are found in Morocco. Hmm. Yeah, something definitely wrong with that scenario. All right. West African again. Some stuff I'm not going to get back into because it's redundant. All right. So all races were born from the black race, the Moors. Science reports that everyone alive today descended from an African woman who lived 200,000 years ago. But now remember, we just showed you um, people who DNA went further back than 2,000 years ago. So see, they're going to have to update their documentation and their information. Based on the evidence of recent findings, modern white science has officially declared that all of present humanity came from one race, the black race, the oldest race. Now we can verify that. That's the truth. Throughout the world, and I don't care if they was in Africa or America. I'm telling you specifically that we're talking about 2.8 billion years ago, that obviously we had some technology in which that was off world, because the fears in which that was found in South Africa dating back to 2.8 billion years ago. Scientists have stated that the only way those spheres could have been made was in zero gravity. In other words, in space. All right. So that's case closed on if we was in Africa, if we was in America. It don't matter. We the so-called Moor race, we're the black race, the oldest race. We're the oldest people on the planet. That's what I'm concerned with. Not necessarily the location. All right. So this is why you got some fighting over, well, we ain't African. Well, we ain't we Indians, we in America, yeah. We was all over the world, as I just finished showing. With 30 million years ago, the Twa people was all over the world. They was in Africa, they was in Asia, they was in Europe, they was in South Africa. It was all over, and they was in all the islands. They was everywhere. They didn't stay in Africa. The pygmies got the hell up and got ghosts. As we said, went around the world. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right. That's what's going on. So right here, it says, scientists have unearthed the ancient bones of a black African pygmy woman who is indisputable lead the mother of all humanity. They nicknamed her Eve. Our common ancestors, a woman who lived 200,000 years ago, has left resilient genes that are carried by all of mankind. Humanity, that is, reported the best-selling issue ever of Newsweek magazine, which depicted a black Adam and Eve on the front cover, headlining it, The Search for Adam and Eve. Scientist magazine 9/11/87 states that the overwhelming evidence shows that Africa was the cradle of modern humans. Well, we know this story, the molecular biology seems to be telling, is that the modern humans evolved from Africa with about 200,000 years ago. All right. National Geographic's reports of a new evidence of an African origin of modern humans. Right. That's October 1988. So they know. All right. Black genes prove the first humans are at least 70% older than previously estimated. So see, this is why we was talking about 200,000 years, when there's people that's been on the planet Earth longer than that. And so this article coming from the Atlantic Black Star, it says, Atlanta Black Star, it says the major problem with the previous analysis of the human sapien already existed hundreds of thousands of years before the Neanderthals. After one African man, Albert Perry, passed away, researchers discovered a unusual, distinct Y chromosome. While all humans have previously been traced back to one common ancestor referred to as Adam, DNA technicians trace Perry's lineage to a much earlier time. It means that Perry and others with the same distinct Y chromosome found in a small area of Cameroon. All right. Now remember, I showed you that I have Cameroon ancestry. I have this same Y marker. So right here, actually are not descendants of Adam. Their origin pushes the dawn of humanity back from 140,000 to 338,000 years. Now that's 138,000 years older than what they first thought. 70% earlier than previously estimates according to the study. Proven once again, life began in Africa from African people. Therefore, you still cannot get the origin of Albions or Asians without the African. Thus, science states that Africans are the origin of the human race, and those that came from them afterwards are hybrids. However, there are some said historians, scholars, anthropologists, archaeologists, scientists, biologists, biophysicists, and etc., that will do everything they can to disprove the same race connections. The said current establishment want to keep racism going, strategize or strategic of the said Illuminati, divide and conquer tactics. Right, that's what this is all about. So come down. I won't get into that. So overall, ancestry is from 82.6, which is 83% to 87% indigenous African. And understand, we talking about Africans that has already been here in the Western Hemisphere for hundreds, thousands, even millions of years. All right. And I'm going to show you that because it will state that in a minute here. So this is Iberian, 5% to 11, actually 17.1%. All right. It's talking about Iberia long refuge for 40,000 years. All right. I'm talking about the last Neanderthals. Well, hold up. Before we get to Neanderthals, all right, let's get to the real people that was there. All right. Because as you know, that is the area in which is very close to Africa. Matter of fact, you can swim across, as they say. All right.
Dr. Lim, can I ask you a few questions?
Yes.
So the first question is, where do you suggest we go first? Like, I know that there's websites like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. I'm not sure which places to trust as far as like finding out
right.
where
Well,
we come from.
you wouldn't just do one, you would do several in order and then do your comparative studies. That's what we are doing. That's what I'm basically showing y'all today. Is how you can do a comparative study. Because I went to Ancestry.com, MyHeritage.com, and GEDmatch, GED Match, and also Genome Link. So those are 4 DNA sites in which that I'm showing you the connections with, in which that they somewhat had some similar. Most of it was similar, but there was some distinct things in which that I had to add to the documentation in order to show the various connections.
Can you, I apologize. Can you repeat those again for me?
MyHeritage.com, Ancestry.com, which is the largest base. Ancestry.com is controlled by the Mormons. They have the largest database, Ancestry.com. MyHeritage.com, like I said, GenomeLink.com, and GEDmatch, GEDmatch.com. And then, of course, you can do 23andMe, you know. But here, what they're talking about in the Iberian Peninsula, it says here, specifically, I want to go through this. It says that yet the story of Spain did not end in the Neolithic farmers from 8,000 years ago. Well, it wasn't the Europeans that was there. They just came into existence 6,000 years ago. The Romans encountered a diverse array of people around the fringes and the interior of the peninsula, adding to its uniqueness. You had the Phoenicians in the south. Remember, Noble Ali said that we come from the Phoenicians, the Canaanites, all right, which are the Hebrews, the Israelites, one and the same people. And that's what we are showing genetically, that everything on which that Prophet Noble Ali talked about actually is within our DNA and is proven from out of his documentation, from out of the Moorish Holy Quran Circle 7. The Celts in the interior and the mysterious people of the East Coast, with some to be distinctly related to the Basque. Adding to this mix was the fall of Rome, were German Visigoth, and the rise of Islam, Moors, which fused Arab culture with Berber genes. Finally, the end of the Muslim period witnessed the mass conversion of many Sephardic Jews to Christianity and to silence passing of the majority of this community into the mass of Iberians. All right. So we already showed that we was all over all the planet and was in all these territories based on the Pygmies. All right. Based on the Pygmies. All right. Right here, we're talking about the Italian. Well, hold up. It says around 2,000 years ago, an influx of Greek, Syrians, and other groups of people arrived from the Italian peninsula. The influence is the most marked in the south, such as Sicily, where a period of Moorish rule left North African ancestry visible on the faces of the people. Now, remember, this is talking about particularly Hannibal. Okay. So when we talk about Italian or Sicily, we talk about Moorish people, especially in southern Italy. All right. All right. Here,
Darlene.
yes.
Yeah, I know. I tell some people that although they say Moorish is an adjective, but I tell them I use it because I like saying it that rather than black.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
That's why I say Moorish. But that does
Right.
link you back to a Moor. You know.
Right.
So I say Moorish. I don't say black.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. We
Black,
understand.
black
We
don't
understand.
link you back to nothing.
Right.
You know?
Right. So in his 1893 Handbook of Heraldry, British antiquarian John Edwin Kershin, 1837-1899, wrote, "The heads of a Moor or blackamoor and the Saracens are wreathed about the temples with a fillet of twisted silk, the tunic or tertures of which may be mentioned." So these are the Italian, what they call the Royal Moorish bloodlines of Italy. All right. One in particular was Alessandro di Mistici, called Little Mo or Moro. His contemporary was the Duke of Penny and also Duke of Florence, 1532. All right. Ruler of Florence from 1530 until 1537. Through illegitimate, he was the last of the senior branch of the Medici to rule Florence, Italy, and the first to be hereditary duke. Historians such as Christopher Hebert believe that he had been born to a black servant woman in the Medici household, identified in documents as Simonetta di Colovo Chio. The nickname was said to derive from his features. He still have descendants via his own illegitimate children amongst many European royal and noble families. All right. So the Moors ruled Italy as well. All right. Historians confirm that the Moors ruled in Europe, primarily Spain and Portugal, for almost 800, 700 years here. They were known for their influence in European culture, but not many people know that the Moors was actually Europeans of African descent. So they was Europeans of African descent. In other words, they was already in Europe. They didn't just come there. The explosion from Spain and the dispersal of Moors in Iberia. Christians' pressures of Moors grew irresistible. Finally, in 1492, Granada, the last important Moorish stronghold in Andalus, was taken by the soldiers of King Fernandez and Queen Isabella, and the Moors were expelled from Spain. In 1496, to appease Isabella, King Manuel of Portugal announced a royal decree banishing the Moors from the portion of this peninsula. The Spanish king Philip III expelled the remainder Moors by a special decree issued in 1609. Fully 3.5 million Moors or Moriscos and their descendants was called left Spain between 1492 and 1610. So we're talking about 3.5 million people. An estimate million Moors settled in France. An estimate of 1 million Moors or more settled in France. Others moved to Holland. A very curious story in the Netherlands is that of Swati Piet or Black Pete. But some accounts that Swati Piet, the companion of Santa Claus, was a Moorish orphan boy whom Santa Claus adopted and trained as his assistant. Uh-oh. All right, so the Iberian Peninsula connection of Spain and Portugal historically, when they left Spain in 1492 and allegedly was expelled, they went into parts of what we now refer to as Puerto Rico, Uruguay, and Brazil. All right. Who they was also the Hebrew Moors who went into Portugal and Spain from 711 to 1492 and allegedly invented slavery. In other words, the enslavement of the Slavic people and other Albion Europeans. All right. Now, the Moors in Europe. This is by Runoko Rashidi, alayhi salam upon him. He just passed this past year. And he says, according to Chancellor Williams in his book, Destruction of Black Civilization, states that the original Moors, like the original Egyptians, were Black Africans. All right. And I'm just using the terminology that they stated. At the beginning of the 8th century, Moorish soldiers crossed over from Africa into Spain, Portugal, and France, where their sweeping victories became the substance of legends. Okay. We just showing you that Spain, Portugal, and French blood, once again, with the Moors heading up into Europe. All right. And this correlates too that the term Moor, all right, let's go here, is an exonym first used by Christian Europeans to designate the Muslim inhabitants of the Maghreb, the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, and Malta during the Middle Ages. The Moors initially were the indigenous Merkabin Berbers. The name was later also applied to Arabs and Arabized Iberians. So the word Moor was never first applied to the Arabs and the Arabized Iberians. It was always applied to us. Okay, this is what is even in history. So 911 Encyclopedia Britannica observed that the term Moor had no real ethnological value. The Sephardic or the Sephardic Jew trace their descendants from the Jews of this period. In other words, the Moors. They trace their heritage to the Moors. Jewish scholarship flourished alongside the Muslim academia. All right. It says the term has also been used in Europe in a broader, somewhat offensive sense to refer to Muslims in general. During the colonial era, the Portuguese used the name Ceylon Moors or Indian Moors in southern or South Asia and Sri Lanka. And the Bengali Muslims was also called Moors. In the Philippines, the long-standing Muslim community, which predated the arrival of Spanish, now self-identified as the Moro people, the Moors, right? An exonym introduced by Spanish colonizers during their due to their Muslim faith. All right, so the Philippines, this is why they refer to themselves even now as Moors, Moro. Now, so you go back to the Sephardic Jews. Remember, we had the Limba Jews or Hebrews. We had the Ethiopian Jews who were called the Phalasians. All right, that's the word I was looking for earlier for somebody to the Phalasians, the Phalasian Hebrews, the Phalasian Jews. So they came from out of Yemen, Arabia, into Ethiopia as the Phalasian Hebrews, went further into the interior to arrive finally into Nigeria as the Limba people. All right. And then went up into Morocco and then eventually into what we now refer to as Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula. All right. So it says the North African Sephardic Jews are part of the broad Mizrahi Jewish population, and including those known collectively as the Maghrebi Jews, acknowledging the western local of their heritage from Morocco. All right, from Morocco, Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia. Jews first made their way to northern Africa either as traders of ancient Israelite kingdoms or during the upheaval following the destruction of King Solomon's temple destroyed the Babylonians in 586 BCE. They settled among the Berber, and their descendants are today the Moroccan Jews. Jews were settled in Algeria since the late Roman period, and its subsequent influx of the immigrants following the Visigothic prosecution in Europe. The Jews of both Libya and Tunisia arrived several hundred years later than the Algerian in the 3rd century BCE under Greek rule, more than 1,000 years after Jews first arrived in North Africa. The Spanish Inquisition and the expulsion of Jews in 1492 CE introduced a second massive migration from the Iberian Peninsula to North Africa. With the establishment of the State of Israel 1948, the vast majority of North African Jewry made its way to Israel from then up until 1970s. Actually, they brought the Phalasians in to fulfill their prophecy. All right. The Phalasians did not want to go into no damn Israel. They was all right being in Ethiopia, but they airlifted them by way of helicopters, the Phalasians, in order to go into Israel so that the European out beyond Israel's Israelites or Zionists, as we call them, was able to steal the prophecy of the dark-skinned Moors or Moroccan Jews. So the Sephardic Jews, as they're called, are actually the Moroccan Jews. And being that we are Moroccan, according to Prophet Nubal Ali, that makes us Jews or Hebrew Israelites also. As I've already stated that back in the debate that I had with Seti back in 2009, 11 years ago. Here it is, a significant portion of North African Jews relocated to France. And outside a community of a couple thousand strong in Morocco, very few Jews remained in North Africa. Well, we know that the Limba people still exist in Nigeria, all the way down into Zimbabwe, South Africa. That's what we do know. All right. So let me come on down. All right. So here it's about 1% of hunter and gatherers. And what we come to find out, you're talking about the physical characteristics of the, check this out now, y'all. This is from Genome Link. It says the Western European hunters and gatherers have blue eyes, dark hair, and dark skin. Hold up. Let's go back to that again. The Western European hunters and gatherers have blue eyes, dark hair, dark skin. But they'll just go back to answering your questions about the lady that you brought up. There's about 75% of the variation of blue versus non-blue eyes color in modern Europeans is due to a genetic marker in and around the OCA2 and the HERC2 genes. These variants are rarely outside of Europe and near absent almost outside of Europe and West Asia. When the first ancient DNA was extracted from the hunter-gatherers who had been dominated in Western Europe became farming, before farming, to the surprise of many researchers, most of them turned out to have had markers today associated with blue eyes, but not the genes for lighter skin or hair. At the end of the Ice Age, a high proportion of Southern Europeans likely had blue eyes than today, but their skin was likely far darker. So this is how they actually look. The so-called hunters and gatherers. It said the hunter-gatherer population inhabited Ireland before being replaced by early farmers. Prehistoric Irish people were dark-skinned and had blue eyes. A new documentary claimed the hunter-gatherer population that lived in Ireland 10,000 years ago did not have any of the pigmentation profile associated with light skin. And they wrote that on my birthday this year, April the 19th, 2021. So early Irish people were dark-skinned with blue eyes. This is how they looked. So this is also verified in the book of Jewish and crypto-Jewish surnames. Right here, it says Scotland is the only European country that never prosecuted Jews. The reason why became abundantly clear as Herishman and the first collaborator on When Scotland Was Jewish. Even if some readers 10 years later cannot entirely accept the daring premise that Scotland served as a haven for Jews beginning with the 12th century. The crypto-Jewish etymology suggested that such names as MacDonald, old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O, and Gordon may have at least provided food for thought. Next came Jews and Muslims in British colonial America, which took a fine-grained, high evolution look at settlers listed in all 13 colonies, focusing on possible Jewish and crypto-Jewish names. Finally, we wrote the early Jews and Muslims in England and Wales, which put British Jews under the microscope. And one of my favorite findings, I proved that Daniel Defoe came from the illustrious Sephardic Jewish family of Fons, originally folks in Aquitaine, related to the ancient name Phoebe and theophobic name containing a godly or divine element. All right, Daniel Defoe and Robert Crusoe. So here we have the Negro rulers of Scotland and British Islands. So it says the enslavement of Europeans did not fit the general theme of European world conquest and colonization that is central to scholarship on the early modern era. This is Robert Davis, professor of Italian Renaissance history, Ohio State University. So this goes back to what the guy that said earlier about them being enslaved. We can find that. All right. So Europeans are not a primary race, but hybrids between Africans and Asians, according to modern DNA research. Europeans are mostly Asians. So what it says, Europeans are mostly Asians, 1/3 African and 2/3 Asians, as we said earlier, right? This is geneticist Kovili Safasa. The overall contribution from Asia and Africa are estimated to be around 2/3 and 1/3 respectively. Simulations have shown that this hypothesis explains quite well the discrepancy between trees obtained from maximum likelihood and neighbors joining. In his genes, people, and the language, he goes in, he said, it appears that Europeans are about 2/3 Asians and 1/3 African. That's what he says. And there it is. Okay. So since they got 1/3 Africans in them, you want to make sure that you get the ones that got the uncalcified pineal glands, which is about 20 to 40% of them. Them the ones that you can deal with. All right. So here go the indigenous Americans, allegedly 1%, but yet you've seen 17% Lumbee. We're going to get to that in a second. So native people of Andes, about 15,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers occupied the site of Mount Verde in southern Chile. All right, so here you go along that area. All right, South Americans, native South Americans were already present there long ago in Chile, Peru, as you see here, Peru. And break down how much estimate of Peru, of the Peruvian that I have. Once again, that's South America. San Martin, Ecuador. All right. All those connections there. Then the native people of Amazon and Caribbean, 1%. And of course, it's more than that, but you know, this is what they're saying on this one. All right. And once again, they're talking about the Siberian people, and this is how you know, because it says right here. While native of the Caribbeans inhabited a tropical wonderland, they arrived to the islands a very long and circuitous journey. Like all other inhabitants of the New World, they was descended from Siberian hunter and gatherers that had migrated eastward 15,000 years ago. Now understand the Europeans didn't get here. All right. So these Siberian hunters and gatherers could only have been so-called melanated people. Because there was no Europeans on the planet Earth 15,000 years ago. They just got here 6,000 years ago, y'all. And the Asians in which that they look like now, from out of Japan and from out of China, they only been here 4,000 years ago. Okay, so these Siberian people that they're referring to had to look like us. Okay, this is why you have the so-called Siberian people who are the so-called Native Americans, Indians. They have more than 25%, almost 25% of genetic makeup of us, because we was the original people here. And I'll show you that. These Siberians was a mixed people who had, how could they have been mixed? When there was only one race of people here, so-called melanated people in that regard. So they might have been mixed with, let's say they was mixed with San people, who's the Kung people, the Pygmies. Okay. You see what I'm saying? But these were so-called black people in which that was the mix. But they're not telling you this. So they have you thinking, oh, these was the Native American people. These the ones who looks like this that was here. No, they couldn't have because they wasn't here. They weren't here. This is a byproduct of Spanish, Portugal, and I'm talking about late Spanish, Portugal, all right? Cortez and all of them. Cortez, all of them, you know, coming after Christopher Columbus, mixing in. All right, along with the Asians who came across the Bering Strait and who also sailed over here. All of this has been just within the last 4,000 years. So that shit is not ancient, as far as we're concerned.
$100,000 years is.
Right.
I'm speaking about the Washington.
Right, exactly.
You got to say that more as a modern term. I said, no, more is ancient.
Right.
Something for the word Mary.
Right.
MBR.
Right.
You know, so I mean, it's ancient. It's an ancient root word.
Right.
So it ain't. More MOMOOR, just the modern usage.
Right. So the Moors or Mari. Mm-hmm.
I know in my nationality papers, you have MU''UR.
Right.
You know, that was the ancient word for more.
Right.
But you know, so I'm gonna let you go ahead. I'm read myself back on out.
Okay. So right here, this is what is known as the Encyclopedic Reference Book documenting the global presence of the ancient indigenous Black Moors. Right, this CD holds 23 volumes of history that unveils the truth of the ancient American Moorish history from all parts of the world. Black people are the true indigenous people of Europe, Africa, the Americas, the Pacific Islands, India, the Middle East, and Asia. Thus, the findings of this material of a cultural diffusion, of the people in the Americas in the pre-Columbian era was soon proved with empirical data, leaving no doubt of the global presence of the worldly presence, all right, I say worldly because not to offend those who are the flat earth, because there are some things in which that I have questions about myself concerning this global thing. But worldly presence of the indigenous Black Moors. So for example, you have the Moors or Maori of the Pacific, New England and Australia. You have the Moors in Phoenicia, Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia, which we already went over all of this because these was the Twa people, the ancient African founders of indigenous civilization of the Americas. This was once again the Twa people. The Twa people are the oldest people on the face of the planet, and they are the ones who are known as the Pygmies, also known as the Antu or the Anu people. The word Bantu or the Antu people, right? And according to Zechariah Ascension, Antu was married to Anu. But yet these are groups of people. All right. He used groups of people to put together a damn story about extraterrestrials. Okay. I'm just trying to break that down. So here it is, 20,000 years ago, a group of Siberian hunter-gatherers ventured east, following big game animals like the mammoth. They were also escaping increasing inclement weather conditions in Asia due to the climate changes of the last glacial maximum. These people was a fusion of two disparate populations. Paleo Siberians, which means old Siberians, which means niggas. All right. And the Northeastern Asians who moved up. Now, I'm sorry, but there was no Northeastern Asians. These was the Asiatics who was that we are still known as today. Okay, we are the Asiatics. Right. So this Northeastern Asians is talking about the talking about the Asiatics. So these was two black people, all right, who came into across the Bering Strait. Okay. And then around 500 years ago, you had the arrival of the Europeans, in particular the lighter skinned Spaniards and you know and them, they came in. Okay. So now I go to Jed match, archaic matches. All right. Now, let me see if y'all can see this. All right. This is Clovis, Montana, 12.5 thousand years ago. So 12.5 thousand years ago. It shows that I had ancestry already here in Montana, already in the so-called United States. Now, this same link, now what made me look and found out that I had the same link, the same marker, was because the goddess Mayat sent me her marker, in which that showed that I had the exact same marker of the Clovis, Montana. Now, and KY means thousands of years ago. So this is 12.5 thousand years ago. Right? That means that the person lived 12,500 years ago in Montana, in the United States. So you get this, Clovis on the edge of new understanding. All right. That's the name of the book. Get the book. Then I also had
What's the name of that book again, Aline?
Clovis, Clovis.
COVID. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Then you have Kennewick, United States. Right? This is another genetic marker that shows that we was already here. And this is 8.3 or 8,300 years ago. All right. 8,300 years ago. So the name of the book in which that proves that is this book. Why a Speculator New Findings is Changing Our Understanding of the People of America. Ancient Encounters, the Kennewick Man and the First Americans. Hold up. How the hell do I get a genetic marker for the first Americans if we wasn't already here? How do I have a genetic marker for the Clovis people dating back 12,500 years ago if we wasn't already here? See, this is what destroys. You can use DNA to destroy their whole premise, because this proves that we was already here before 400 years ago. Their own DNA test fucks that shit up. You understand that? Hold it. I'm gonna say this again. So right here, this is my Jed match, archaic matches. We went back into the archives, goddammit. That's what that means. So Clovis, Montana, 12,500 years ago. This is the book that you can get an understanding. Clovis on the edge of a new understanding. And then you go to 8,300 years ago. It speaks of an ancient encounter of Chittiwek Man and the First Americans by James C. Chatters. So these two books speaks about Clovis, not COVID, but COVID, Clovis, and the Kennewick. Okay, proving that we was already here before 500 years ago. So this proves it. All right, DNA test proves it that we was already here and that we ancient. So you can actually take this information and put inside of your documentation. Oh shit! See, now we getting it.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
It's kind of off topic, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm having a situation as far as like my safety. And they're not wanting to give me a restraining order against a few people that I'm afraid they might do something against me. So I was thinking of doing an affidavit of stay away for them to stay away from me. What do you think about that?
Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can definitely do that.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. All right. So once again, this proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that we was already here before 400 years ago, before the so-called slave trade. You got an ancestry that goes back 8,300 years ago, 12,500 years ago, and even further back than that. Because this is just the so-called Siberian bloodline connection that came across the Bering Strait. This ain't talking about the ancient African bloodline that already was over here, because I've already proved that also, that the Twa people was already here. Okay, so this is these are the connections here that we are looking for. So Black Indians are not solely a result of African slave mixing with Red Indians. This is what they want us to believe, and many would have you to believe. Black Indians are indigenous to this land before the so-called red man, before the European, before the so-called Great Plain Indians. We, the Olmec, the Washita, the Moors, the Yamasee, the mound builders, planted the seeds of civilization in this country, America. Today, we are the remnants of these elders, and at the time that we are revealing the bigger picture, our true legacy, not as African slaves, not as immigrants, not as runaways, but as what we are, and that what we are is indigenous Washita Indians, or in this case, Moors. All right, Robert Strong Rivers Williams, president of the National Olmec American Heritage and Research Committee. All right. Now, all right, so my family roots in Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina. All right. Now, let me see if I can get this here. All right. So this is part of a speech in which that Joe did. Okay. Joe is the emperor's son. in which that he did on Friday, August the 6th, 2004. This is a few months after we visit the Empress in the nursing home. We visit her in the nursing home in May. By August, Joe was doing some things as far as going to Geneva. Joe stated that the purpose of this conference call was to speak. Well, before we even get to that, this is the conference call. This is actually what happened. Comfortable to speak with the delegates that went to Geneva, Switzerland, and to give a report on the events that has taken place on the trip regarding Ouachita becoming a sovereign nation. Participants on this call greeted each other and introduced themselves. I was on this call. Joe stated that he was not the emperor, nor did he use the title for himself. He could not be the emperor since his mother was still alive. Joe stated that that should be mother makes a transition, his daughter would become the empress, which she did, Wendy. The Ouachita is and always will be a matriarchal society, and everyone should know this fact could not be changed at a whim. Joe stated that although Ouachita has been recognized as an indigenous people, however, the nation has not been recognized as an indigenous sovereign nation. The criteria to be recognized as a sovereign nation is as follows. Ouachita must be recognized as a nation by 5 to 7 sovereign nations having land and be developing the land. Those things are being worked on now to put them in place. Also, Ouachita must show that it is able to govern itself. All right. And we was told at the United Nations, we must have also 10,000 people at least. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, had over 8,000 documented Ouachita. All right. Joe told us that FBI confiscated over 20,000 Ouachita national papers. He needed to receive documentation from other parties who have declared their nationality. Joe has over 2,000 original documentation of the original Ouachita nationals. Joe has been in communication with the Ouachita people in South Carolina, North Carolina, Alabama, Texas, Mississippi, California, Illinois, Florida, and New York. Okay. We was the ones in North Carolina at that time. All right. So here it is, according to my heritage, Southern Georgia and Northern Florida. All right. This is my genetic group in which that goes back anciently. English and some Irish, Scottish, African Americans in the United States, Southern Georgia, and some Northern Florida. DNA kits used to form this group, 240. DNA kit linked to family tree, 93. All right, so so here you have Northern Georgia and Southern Georgia and Northern Florida. All right. You see the matches there on the right. Excuse me, on the left. Excuse me. On the right hand side of each of the particular areas, you have this southeastern Georgia, southern Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. All right. All right, we have French settlers in southwestern Louisiana. All right. These French settlers was the royal house known as the royal lineage known as the Huguenots. That's what we talked about last week. These are the French settlers in southwestern Louisiana. And they mixed in with the Ouachita and the Choctaw people, the Creole, to create the Creole in western Louisiana and in southeastern Texas. All right. You have some there in the southern United States, and other places such as Canada, Denmark, and so forth and so on. All right, here you see the other ethnic groups in which that was shared. And this is to compared to my cousin, James Henry Richardson. The Richardsons are part of the Cherokee on the Dawes Road, but they are also Sapani, the Hawani Sapani tribe, which is right here in Warren County, Vance and Warren County, and the surrounding areas on up into Virginia. Okay. So as you see here, the genetic group in which I'm connected to is the southern and northeastern United States, also Portugal, right? German, Denmark, England, southern Georgia and northern Florida, Peru, South America, mostly Peru and Central America, all right? And then we got connections in North Carolina and different other places there. So this is a map of the original people who existed in the area at that time period. All right. This is the Virginia map, Florida actually, all the way down to Florida, from Virginia to Florida, tell you how the people looked. This is the Oglebay map. All right. And this is how these people look here. Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, so Georgia, Florida, and this is the indigenous people. This is how they look. Now, you see any pale skin Indians? Do you see any red skin Indians? Do you see any Albions? These were the people who was from Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida area. This is how they looked. All right. If you can't see too well, let me blow it up a little bit here. All right. This is how they look. Okay. So as you can see, they don't have that long hair in which that you've been used to seeing of the people who reside in those areas. You see that these are melanated people on the maps of Oglebay map. Now let's go up and read the Oglebay map and see how old this map is. All right. This is Virginia, Partis Australis, ex Floridae, and basically it goes into map maker John Oglebay, London, 1671. This is 1671. Oglebay map of the southeast extended from New York River to Virginia to northern Florida. So this is the whole East Coast, y'all. The map shows the area from the lower Chesapeake Bay to northern Florida and is faithful reproduction of William Blow, important prototype map of 1638, which coming concerning to be the most correct map of the area yet to appear. This reduced example is the most decorative that Blue, and that it bear two large decorative contusions depicting native scenes, as in we are the Native Americans. Burden. This map was first published in Montanus Landmark, perhaps the greatest illustrated book on the New World produced in the 17th century. Montanus work contained over 100 beautiful grave plants, views and maps of North and South America, beginning in 1671. The map also appeared in early issues of England edition of Montanus issued by John Ogilvy, but was replaced in 1673 by the famous First Lord Priority map, which gave a more up-to-date picture of the English presence in Carolina. So we're talking about actually all the way from New York, all the way to Florida, the whole East Coast. These are the people that they seen in 1671, y'all. Okay? These are the people. So what happened is that Virginia passed 2 acts in 1682 that combined Native Americans and Africans into one category, Negroes and other slaves. Now, this is how they looked, Negroes and other slaves. All right, so the written record of the voyage of 1524 by Giovanni di Verrazzano, and recorded in a letter to Francis I, King of France, July the 8th, 1524. Please note the description of the natives. They are darker skin in color, not unlike the Ethiopians, with thick black hair and not very long, tied back behind their head like a small tail. As the physique of these men, they are well proportionate, of the medium height, a little taller than we are. They have broad chests, strong arms and legs, and other parts of the body are well composed. So this is 1524. This is before the so-called slave trade of 1619, where they claimed that they bought 20 slaves from Africa. Actually, it just says 20 Negro slaves. It don't say anything about coming from Africa. All right. But here, the Negro question, part 6, the 13 black colonies. So now we show you that this was black on black. All right. So you have black people that was already here along the eastern seaboard, which is the same location of what? Of the 13 colonies. So now we come and find out that black people connected with black people. These now are the 13 black colonies, as they're called. This research in this book will prove that the 13 British colonies was founded by 4 black Scottish kings: King James VI of Scotland, King Charles I, King Charles II, and King James II, Duke of York, and King George II of England. All right. Actually, this is 5. This book features the testimony of former Secret Service agent John Mackey of England, in which he gives black description of the prince, nobles, dukes, and kings of England. All right. This book also features a ship manifest that describes the Jacobites. Now, who are the Jacobites? Those are the Jews, Hebrews, Israelites, which they are boarding the convict ships to the Americas as brown, black, swarthy, and ruddy people. There's not the only document that validates the claim of this book. We have the writings of Thomas Jefferson, Professor Boyd Dawkins, Benjamin Franklin, and much more. So let's look at it right here. Many of today's images of black rulers of Europe are falsely propagandized as white people. Their portraits have been whitened, distorted, as merely invented to give a fake impression of Europe earlier rulers. However, there remains some authentic black portraits that are hidden from public view, while a few are exhibited in the National Portrait Gallery in England. Every European museum has overpainted 99% of the black portraits was fake white skin color. The remaining lost or hidden dark-skinned portraits were found and exposed to the public or falsely identified to have looked black because of poor upkeep, outright negligence, or the portrait itself was exposed to a horrific fire. How absurd, since the prime object is to cover up evidence. The Europeans were once ruled by the dark-skinned African Moorish royal people. When slavery began in the area of 1441, not our so-called slavery, their slavery, all right? Every nation of Europe was ruled by a royal house of Negro ancestry, whom centuries later followed the French Revolution, 1789, practicing self-discrimination by racially reclassifying themselves into various white ethnic groups to hide their true African Moorish origin. Slavery ended in Europe under two Moorish Negro kings, King George III, all right, and King George IV. When the American colonialists fought against Great Britain for their independence, little did the people realize that Europe's, England's King George III was of the African Moorish descent through the bloodline of Kenneth the Nigger, or Niger, who was also called Dub, Black, Duffy, or Duff, who was a descendant of Scottish first dynastic king Kenneth MacAfin. All right. Negra, Vaude, Val, Duffy, or Black. DNA testing, which is largely government control, has proven that Europeans to be genetically a people of Negro race. The Royal Finlay, when his first seen the Britons, identified their complexion as Ethiopian. The Moorish King George III's wife was Sophia Charlotte, an African queen whose father was Black. Well, a Moor. So this shows you what we're talking about. So these are the people who actually came here, all right? The Europeans came as their slaves from out of, remember, you hear the story of that the Europeans was put out of the jails and prisons of Europe, and they came here. Well, the custodians of them were the 13 colonies who was formed by these actually four Scottish kings and one English king. All right. King James VI of Scotland, King Charles I, King Charles II, King Charles II, King James II, Duke of York, and King George II of England. Right? These 5 kings. All right. So right here, DNA communities shows again early North Carolina African American. All right. Allegedly 1700s, 1800s. It goes further back than that, but this is what they're showing. Right. In the Caribbeans, African Caribbean, 1750 to 1850. Leeward Islands, African Caribbean. You have the African Bohemian and Afro Bermudians, 1750 to 1850. You have Middle Atlantic coast African Americans in the Carolina, Maryland, and Virginia African Americans. This is what they're saying. So my DNA states not only am I indigenous aboriginal to the Americans, North, Central, South America, but also to the Caribbean islands, misnomer in the West Indies, also called Americana, but to Africa and Asia. Why? Because we are the oldest people on earth. Europeans just came upon Earth 6,000 years ago and the Chinese 4,000 years ago. So if you are claiming Siberian heritage, all right, and we're talking about the way in which that they look Siberian according to the pictures, not according to the actual history, which was Black people, so-called Moors, coming across the Bering Strait, then your ancestors met mines. All right. In other words, we was already here. As we showed, we was here 8,300 years ago. We was here 12,500 years ago. Those were just impacts of us coming here over those years. And this is way before the Europeans, way before the Asians. So we already proven that. I'll show that through our ancestry. So this is what I'm saying. The ancestry information can prove your lineage, your archaic lineage, and nobody can disprove it now. So now you can take this information and put it inside of your documentation. What can they say? Nothing. Nothing. Okay? They can't say nothing. So we was already here. Professor Dr. Albert Goodyear, stated that our ancestry that you refer to as African was in the Americas 50,000 years ago. Therefore, the only way in which that you could be indigenous is through my bloodline. Get it? And see, this is us talking to the so-called Red Indians. All right. The only way that they can be indigenous is through our bloodline, because we was already here. And this is shown and proven by their scientists over and over and over again. If they just did a little research instead of getting emotional about this.
It's their scientists.
Right. This exactly. This is their scientists. This isn't personal. This is business. This is
Another
business.
problem is that so many of our people talking about they black,
Right.
people of color,
Right.
African Americans.
Right.
That's a big problem with us.
Right. That's a big problem. Exactly.
They don't want to be Moors or indigenous.
No, they don't want to be that. They don't.
Aborigines.
Right. They don't want that. They don't want that. That's too much for them, brother L. Oh shit, that's too much for them. They can't handle that, brother L.
You got that right, man. I don't know what it is.
Right. Me neither. But we want to bring up the fact that we are having our United Washington Deducted Money or More Law and Health Conference, our powwow, Indigenous, Achatanis, Aboriginal, American powwow this winter solstice, Indigenous Aboriginal powwow celebration, December the 17th, 18th, and 19th. That's December the 17th, 18th, and 19th. We will be having it here in North Carolina at our bookstore / vegan restaurant. Okay, so get your connections now. Get your you can go to our calendar of events on our page. All right, calendar of events on our dralienlbay.com internet page. All right. Are there any questions concerning how we can prove this information to anyone in which that comes forth and state otherwise? They will put this information in. Huh?
Yeah, we can try to get it as best as we can on mainstream media, but I know they're not going to do it.
Right.
To get this information around, or maybe print some books, or maybe we can get it put in. I don't know, because man, the truth is hard to get out.
Yeah.
It is. All I can do is they try to write some, not stories, but some small lettering, and I send it to you, and for you to consider, see what y'all think about it.
Right.
Maybe y'all can get it printed on the newspapers or something.
Right.
For the video and television, that's hard to do.
Right.
Say we black, we can get it on easy now.
Right.
So we black and African American.
Oh yeah. Right.
We can get that out.
Oh yeah, they can. Yeah, they can get that out. No doubt about that.
But, that's something I can think of. I know I have I wear a lot of shirts, on the back of my shirt, it has Indigenous Lives Matter.
Right.
People Lives Matter.
Exactly.
Like it brings some attention to me,
Exactly. Get some questions going.
Right. That's why I wear shirts like that.
Right.
I put it on out there, so like I said, if the things were normal, we have to do that.
Right.
Wouldn't be no need for it.
Right.
But most of our people don't know that they're indigenous. They never use the word indigenous.
Right. That's true, brother.
Never.
Right.
Never.
Right.
So that's about all I got to say.
All right. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, brother L. All right. Anyone else have anything to say before we go? Mayat, I don't know if you want to say something about that same marker that you sent me and how I got the same marker. So that's interesting too, right?
Yeah. And you know what? The person who told me about it when I
Right.
tested mine,
Mm-hmm.
it was so many of us over here
Right.
with Clovis Boy and Kennewick Man. It's so ridiculous.
Right. Right.
I mean, really.
Right. And see,
Yeah, I
and
take Washington
yeah, I tell you what, Stoish.
yeah, I
I
have the
just wanted
same
to show that.
clovers
I just wanted to show
as
that
well.
part. Yeah, I just wanted to show that part that we are indigenous because DNA proves it. And here are the markers on which that shows those connections. You know, we talking about thousands of years or over here, you know, tens of thousands of years as compared to 400 years that they have told us about. So DNA proves this information. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that, brother Joff. Continue on.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to bear witness to the fact that I have that when I did the ancestry
Right,
search as well. Those same markers and
right,
yeah,
exactly,
it's really close. So
right, exactly.
I just
Now,
So
Doc Eileen,
yes,
something with, and I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
no, that's fine.
With
Go
the
ahead.
Queen Mother, with how she, was doing the class action suit,
Right,
this is really, really good to dig our teeth in with it. Hey,
yes,
they're lying. They're
right,
lying to our children in
right,
these schools about who they are,
right,
and we have DNA evidence,
right,
your evidence.
exactly, and that's the point. That's the reason why I'm bringing this information up so they can move forward into the lawsuits. Because that's what I say. We can not only put this information to our documentation, but into our lawsuits. You know, because this is verification that you are dealing with an indigenous people, and based on your scientists, we've been here before the last ice age. Now, how is that possible? You told me that we just got here 400 years ago, but the DNA marker shows that I was here over 12,500 years ago, and that was just one of the older impacts. That wasn't the oldest impact. Hell, we can show you what damn Albert Church Goodyear showed, and he said that we was here 51,700 years ago. We can go further back than that, where the Emperor said that we was here 100,000 years ago. We can go further back than that and just keep going. The fossil was here 75,000 years ago. You know, so we can just keep showing over and over again, give a timeline of how long we've been here. You know,
Tell them to go back to their scientists.
right? Go back to your scientists.
And Doc Alim, on that note, remember in Forbidden Archaeology and these other books that you have us, reading, the scientists themselves will tell you, I'm only saying you're this old because if I go any older, they're not going to publish me.
Exactly. Right. So I guess we should be good with 2.8 billion years ago.
They know we older.
Right. Well, Elijah Muhammad stated that we was older, so, they want to try to, discredit him. And it's hard when everything in which that the scientists are now saying is actually giving credit to what he stated back in 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, that's something.
Yeah. All right, y'all. I just want to get that. The crazy part is, y'all, I'm gonna have to redo the class that I did last week because for whatever reason, it did not record it except for just showing me and my wife talking through the thing, but not the actual documentation. So hopefully, the documentation got shown this time.
I can hear it again.
Yeah, I saw the documentation.
Okay, good, perfect. But I'm hoping that but I had the documentation last week too. Did y'all see the documentation last week?
Yeah, we saw it too.
Well, it did not record it. So that's what I'm saying. There's something was wrong. So they made sure that whatever happened, it was not recorded, y'all. So I'm gonna have to redo it again this week. All right, with the actual recordings. If not tonight, you know what I'm saying? I feel pretty good tonight. I might do it tonight. So who knows?
And if you do it, Doc Arlene, just tell us and we'll repost it. I'll post it on Facebook so that everybody can see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, okay.
Oh, good.
All right.
Now tell him, are you going live? Because one of my people told me that you're live.
Yeah,
right
I'm live on YouTube. I'm live on StreamYard. So yeah, I'm live.
Okay.
Also, I'm live here on free conference call. So I'm getting it all in, y'all. I'm making sure
All
that the
right.
information is published this time. That's what I'm doing.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So actually I might just end up doing it now. Who knows? All right.
Might as
If we
well.
get the energy and time, why not?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna come back in then for those that want to stay. You know, we're gonna do that next class over again, and this time make sure that it's documented.
Okay.
All right. So peace,
Okay.
y'all. I'm gonna go out and come back in.
Yeah, they watch
Okay.
Yeah, I tell you what story is.
I'll tell you what stories.
All right. And for those that's still listening on exactly 76 trillion years ago, exactly. For those that's still listening on StreamYard and YouTube, come back within the next 10 minutes or so, and we're gonna go over the next documentation in which that we did last week, but we didn't get a chance to put that information out. So we're going to redo it again. All right. That's right. Time never was when man was not. Just that simple. All right. We out, y'all. Yeah, I'll tell you what story is.
Peace.
Peace.
I'll tell you what stories.